Um, I know we are scheduled to start at 10 o'clock. We are just a couple of minutes behind schedule, so we are going to go right into our program. At this moment, I initially was supposed to give you the welcome remarks, but my boss, who trumps me, is going to do that remark. So we welcome Professor H. Prempe, the Executive Director for CDD-Ghana.
Good morning. I think Michael should have added that he roped me into this role on very short notice. I wasn't supposed to be doing this. In fact, I actually wasn't even going to show up here because I have another meeting related to the Constitution review work that we're doing. But thank you for coming. Good morning. So Hene Kwapong is an interesting fella. He's not a lawyer, which is good. And so when he told us he wanted to do a presentation or a lecture on the Constitution, looking beyond the text, we were quite excited. He's one of these avant-garde people who just think outside the box, do all kinds of interesting things. Typical MIT guy, his mind is always thinking of very interesting ways of getting at a subject. So we are very excited to have him here speak to us about a very topical issue, about something that is quite topical. The committee that I chair happens to be at the home stretch, almost getting close to the finish line. So this is somewhat timely. I'm also advised that Hene Kwapong has already made submissions to the committee in his personal capacity. So I believe that we have some of his insights already into the document. So I am not going to take too much of your time. I'm also interested to listen to him and to hear what he has to say. I know him already. He's a fellow of the center, though based in the US. And we've discussed various issues over the years across a wide spectrum of subject matter. But I'm still very excited that he has decided to handle this subject. I like the fact that he has brought his mind to bear on this, because we tend to leave the subject of the Constitution to lawyers. And I think it's a big error. And so when I see non-lawyers applying themselves seriously and intellectually to this exercise, I'm quite excited. In fact, on the committee, we have at least 3 non-lawyers, and it was very deliberate to make sure that it was not an all-lawyer kind of group. And I think we have been better for it as a committee for having people who come at the subject from a non-lawyerly perspective and who have really very interesting insights that we have benefited from. We saw the same thing when we went around the country and spoke to Ghanaians in various communities, and really it was very impressive to see the extent to which people who are not otherwise practitioners of the law and don't deal with the Constitution as a professional kind of matter have really thought through the issues of governance and development and democracy in this country and have applied themselves in this way. So I'm looking forward to this, and unfortunately at some point I will have to leave and join another meeting. So thanks for giving me the chance to welcome all of you. Michael, you can come back for your mic. Thank you.
So let's have a special acknowledgement of Ms. Shamima Muslim, who is the Deputy Presidential Spokesperson at the Office of the President. She is here this morning with us. We are also expecting someone from the Office of the Minority Leader from Parliament. So we would duly acknowledge the person when they get here. At this moment, in terms of our programs, we are going to receive some brief remarks from Ms. Muslim for this morning.
Good morning. Would you think that brief is a subjective or objective term? Brief to a journalist or a politician might be distinctively different to others, is it? Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm very happy to be here to represent the Chief of Staff who was invited to today's lecture and who would have loved to be here, but for some other very important matters he has to see to at the presidency. So I will read his remarks on his behalf with your kind permission. So distinguished chair, if there's any, I didn't recognize there's one. So distinguished chairperson, esteemed guests and participants at today's lecture, the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. Good morning once again. When I say good morning, I actually expect a response. So on behalf of the Chief of Staff, Mr. Julius Debra, I would like to extend our warmest regards to all of you for attending today's lecture at the CDD. The theme, Beyond the Text, Making Ghana's Constitution Deliver Democracy, is not only timely, but central to the sustenance of our fledgling democracy. The 1992 Constitution wasn't intended to be merely a legal text, with no spirit, with no letter, and with no expected outcomes in terms of tangibles for the development of our country. Indeed, it is the foundation of Ghana's democratic experience thus far, one that has sustained beyond our previous constitution, so obviously something right must have been done. But a constitution, however well-intentioned or well-crafted, only delivers democracy when it moves beyond its words into practice and intentional actions. Our duty, therefore, is to ensure that the ideals enshrined in our Constitution translate into tangible benefits where the principles of accountability, of fairness, of inclusion, and justice are ensured and felt for every citizen. In January 2025, His Excellency the President John Dramani Mahama inaugurated an 8-member Constitution Review Committee chaired by the CDD's own Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. The committee's mandate was to revisit all earlier reform efforts, engage with citizens of all shades and colors nationwide, and recommend reforms that respond to Ghana's contemporary needs. Submissions we hear have already been received from a cross-section of our society: civil society, traditional authorities, labor unions, media, persons with disability, women groups, regional representatives, etc. The President is eagerly awaiting the final report from this very important exercise. Recent constitutional developments have underscored the resilience of Ghana's democratic institutions. Earlier this year in April, acting in accordance with Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution and upon the advice of the Council of State, President John Dramani Mahama suspended the Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu following the submission of petitions alleging misconduct. In keeping with the constitutional requirements, a duly constituted committee of inquiry was established to examine the matter, Upon receiving the committee's report and recommendations, the President, exercising his constitutional mandate under Article 146(6) of the Constitution, officially removed the Chief Justice from office. Calls on us to move beyond the text by taking intentional actions like setting up the Constitution Review Commission or committee, I beg your pardon, to make the necessary proposals to reform the gaps that we all agree exist in our Constitution. Until that happens, that is our guiding light, to which we must return at all times and translate its provisions to the actions and decisions we take on a daily basis. The President's commitment to deepening accountability is deeply enshrined in our Resetting Ghana agenda, which affirms that accountable governance is the bedrock of national renewal. It recognizes that our democracy cannot thrive where impunity flourishes, and that institutions must serve as guardians of the people rather than shields for misconduct. Accordingly, the agenda outlines a comprehensive framework to deepen constitutional accountability and general accountability and restore public confidence in governance. To that extent, a number of actions have been taken by this government. One is rationalization of government structures, where we have seen a comprehensive streamlining of the size and functions of government to eliminate redundancies and enhance coordination and ensure the efficient and judicious use of public resources. Steps have also been taken to strengthen anti-corruption institutions through reinforcing the Office of the Special Prosecutor and anti-corruption committees with the mandate, resources, and independence required to investigate, to prosecute, and to deter corruption at all levels. The establishment of the Governance Advisory Council is one action that seeks to institutionalize an independent advisory mechanism chaired by Dr. Valerie Sawyer to provide evidence-based guidance and promote policy coherence, thereby reinforcing accountability in executive decision-making. Again, His Excellency's government has enforced the Public Officers Conduct Bill with the intent of entrenching ethical leadership, starting with self through the launch of his own Public Officers Conduct Bill for his appointees and other public officers. This is to entrench ethical leadership by ensuring strict compliance with conflict of interest regulations, including prohibitions on the acceptance of gifts and other inducements that undermine integrity in public service. This is not only an ideal, there are examples of its enforcement when the President announced a forfeiture of salary by appointees who had failed to meet a deadline to submit their asset declaration forms. So here we are seeing in real life commitment to the ideals enshrined in our own provisions. There is also the setting up of the Independent Monument and Heritage Commission to safeguard national monuments, states' assets, and cultural heritage from political appropriation or misuse, preserving them as symbols of unity and shared history. The President has also, through the strengthening of the audit service and asset declaration regime, enhanced the independence and operational capacity of the audit service, while ensuring rigorous enforcement of asset declaration requirements to foster transparency and accountability among public office holders. Whereas we still recognize that we need to deepen and widen the scope of the asset declaration regime. Our Operation Recover All Loots was launched as a structured initiative to trace, recover, and restore to the state all resources and assets unlawfully acquired through corruption or abuse of office, underscoring the principle that public wealth belongs to the people. Press freedom is very dear to His Excellency and to his government. To that extent, our Constitution must seek to continuously uphold the independence and the protection of the media as a cornerstone of democracy, ensuring that journalists can operate without censorship, intimidation, or political interference while promoting responsible journalism as a partner in it. Democracy must move beyond elections to become part of everyday governance. Citizens, particularly the youth and women and persons with disability and other excluded groups, must have platforms to shape policies, to monitor the implementation, and to hold leaders to account. Civic education, decentralization, and the use of technology are vital tools for strengthening inclusive governance and must find expression in our everyday reality. The rights that have been enshrined in our 1992 Constitution must be manifested in our daily lives. Equality must translate into fair access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. Freedom must guarantee speech, association, and free press. Justice must be timely and affordable to all. The Reset Ghana agenda insists that social protection, economic reforms, and inclusive policies must transform constitutional promises into measurable improvements in people's lives. The weaknesses of this constitution notwithstanding. And this has been the reason why the finance minister has spent in these vital areas since the beginning of this year as part of the Resetting Ghana agenda. Therefore, democracy must be measured not only in constitutional provisions or in election results, but in the jobs created, the justice that they have, and the leaders that we elect. This is the essence of moving, in our view, beyond the text and making Ghana's constitution deliver democracy. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Ghana's constitution will deliver democracy only if we as leaders, as civil society, as media, as faith-based organizations, as citizens generally, commit to breathing life into its provisions. It is our collective duty to protect the independence of institutions whilst demanding accountability from those institutions. It is also our responsibility to demand accountability from ourselves and to ensure inclusivity in governance. This is the vision of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama's Resetting Ghana agenda, one that invites all of you to hold hands and build and co-create the Ghana that we all want, the Ghana that we deserve to live in as citizens. His Excellency the President believes that this agenda is the pathway to consolidating Ghana's democracy. Beyond this vision, he reiterates constantly lies responsibility, that each generation is called to defend the spirit of constitutionalism, to resist the erosion of freedoms, and to strengthen the bonds between state and citizen. If we remain faithful to this duty, the Constitution will not only be a text we reference, lament over, despair over, but it will become a living document as it has been envisaged to be, a covenant we live by, a covenant that secures justice, equality, and prosperity for all Ghanaians. On behalf of the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, we wish you all a successful lecture and we thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Muslim. Can we please give it up for her again one more? As I started listening to her, one thing that caught my attention said the Ghana we want. Is that a Ghana we have? So it allows for us to have an introspective rethinking of where we want to be. And that's why this lecture is very important. And beyond the text, making Ghana Constitution deliver democracy is significant in our current historical context. And as has been reiterated by Professor Premper and Ms. Muslim, it's coming at a time as in alliance with the Constitutional Review Commission that our own prof here is heading. This lecture is also going to contribute to the rising chorus of voices that's advocating for a constitution that not only enshrines democratic principles, but also resonates with the lived experiences and aspirations of all Ghanaians. And as we navigate this pivotal moment, it invites us to reflect deeply on how we can ensure that our foundational legal document truly embodies the spirit of our democracy and meets the needs of all members of our society. With that said, I will invite Mr. Jonah Eledi to do us the honor of introducing the guest speaker.
So our guest speaker is a very distinguished personality. He has experience across many sectors. He's been very influential in transforming many businesses, both globally. He sent me a 7-page document, and I was wondering how I would deliver all of this, but I'm going to try to do this in a very compressed format. So who is Dr. Hene Aku Kwapong? He is an accomplished executive with extensive experience in finance, capital markets, technology, and operations. He has a proven track record of leading high-impact global initiatives, restructuring organizations, and driving significant business transformation. He has delivered global business transformation and risk management initiatives across both private and public sectors. And his expertise spans regulatory compliance, fintech innovation, and corporate restructuring. He managed Microsoft's commercial software initiative, where he led the strategy to blunt the threat of Linux to Microsoft's business model, and ultimately led to the establishment of Microsoft's first standalone public sector business segment. Previously, Dr. Hene Aku Kwapong was the Chief Restructuring Officer and Head of FinTech at Park Street Advisors, where he was responsible for operationally intensive restructurings and led to the development of the Explore Markets FinTech platform. He has also held senior leadership positions at Royal Bank of Scotland and Dutch Bank, where he managed complex credit trading and structured finance initiatives, driving profitability and regulatory compliance to respond to global financial regulations such as Dodd-Frank, and Volcker. At Deutsche Bank, as the senior vice president and in charge of structured products and trading finance, he partnered with business leaders to deliver profitability targets for NPIs, that is, new product initiatives. Dr. Hene Aku Kwapong holds a PhD in artificial intelligence, modeling risk control from Columbia University, an MBA from MIT, and both MSc and BSc degrees in chemical engineering, again from MIT. He also holds certificates in risk management and finance derivatives. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Hene Aku Kwapong.
If I actually had known this is what you're going to do with it, I would have saved you half a page. So, should I use this or should I? Okay, all right. So I brought an iPad and a pencil because usually I don't like slides. So I was actually going to have a whole bunch of blank pages and work it through with you what I want to sort of share. Then Kojo tells me that, do you want to do a lecture or a speech? I'm not a fan of speeches. The last time I did a speech in Ghana, I said something that sent people to my house, and I don't want anybody coming to my house again. So last night, I started out actually, I think around about 11 a.m., and basically put this slides together. So let me apologize. If the slides says something that you don't like, please, apologies. But I know I'm in a room full of the best of Ghana's mind and grown-ups. So let's have an honest discussion. Some of these topics, what I'm going to say will be sensitive. Some of them, you may not like it. All I want to say is this. Let's sort of really talk through it, right? Folks see the beyond the text. There's always an assumption what I'm talking about, right? So what I'm going to do is I want us to look at a way that I think about this, right? Because there's a series of interventions I want to propose, right? And for full disclosure, I've sent a whole paper to the president. I spent time and worked through the rationale and data. So this is coming from discussions that I've had, some of the submissions that I've done to the commission, right? But Afrobarometer did something. There's always this discussion among Ghanaians that, oh, democracy is not working and we should find something else and whatnot. And you ask them, okay, what is it that you want to find, right? It naturally comes back to, oh, no, I don't want to go military rule. No, I don't want one-party rule. No, we don't want one-man rule, right? So what do we want? We prefer democracy, right? So it tells me that maybe there's a bit of misunderstanding about what democracy is. We've seen it in other places. We've seen outcomes, and we assume we want those outcomes. But we really don't know how they got there, right? So let me define democracy for us today as this, right? And with this, then we'll delve into it, right? So for me, democracy is not just a political system, but what? A way for us to live together. It's a way for us to live together. Meaning that we have to really navigate, litigate all the elements that basically will bring us for living together. Now, what do you see here? This is Ghana. This is this is actually right opposite National Theatre, right? This is close to Flagstaff House. This is actually near EcoBank, Ghana, where folks have taken the blocks, and every morning they basically, set up and shop. And this is a guy who basically the traffic control, he's basically opened it up, and he stores yam there
to basically sell every morning. And it's right opposite our Great Bank, right? So you see the rules, put in laws, put in this and this and this. But it's actually a much bigger problem that this shows. It's not a problem that you can legislate away. And that's the temptation we always have, right? So I'm going to sort of share with you a framework, and then we'll go through the interventions quickly and then sort of understand. Now, what do we want Ghana to be? Again, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, we can be like Singapore, right? So here's China, here's South Korea, here's Taiwan, here's Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, and North Korea. So everybody looks at that and says, oh, my goodness, one person ruled the whole thing, so maybe we also need one person to rule the whole thing, right? So you go through, you say, okay, China did not have one person, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, different people. But there's something that has happened that has made them develop, right? Now, you have South Korea. They had dictatorship, and then they switched to more democracy, and they basically started election, right? And then you have Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, followed by the people that he's trained, Malaysia, Mahathir. You have all these names that you hear. And you somehow think that somehow, maybe if we had Nkrumah, we would also have done that. I had no idea. The thing is, these guys have had Kim Song-nyu, and they've got his son. For a long time, nothing has happened, right? The reason why I've shaded this purple is that if you actually look at the data, something happened with their society that we don't get into it because we sort of take the outcomes for granted that somehow you have the person, you will get there, right? Now, they all have reaching takeoff. I have this story that I always share with people, what I call the bucket brigade. A guy's house is burning down in a village. There are 100 people in the village. So they all see the guy's house burning down. So guess what? They went and called all of them, say, hey, Kojo's house is burning down. Let's help Kojo, right? So everybody with a bucket picked up their bucket, went to the river, and basically started just hauling water to go and help the guy turn out, basically get the fire off. What happens? The guy's house actually burned down completely. At the end, 100 people stood there pouring water on it, and the house burned down. Then comes Kwame's house, which also got on fire. And this time around, somebody said, no. We are not going to all go turn it out. Here's one bucket. What we're going to do is everybody's going to be in a line, and from the house, there's a line all the way to the water. So one bucket, you fetch the water, you pass it on to each person and whatnot, and they save the house. Why? Because there's something about systems and really having an order or a sort of what I'll call a social organization that makes solutions happen, right? So how do we get to this takeoff? When I look at Ghana, this is what I'm imagining, right? And this is what makes our case very challenging, and this applies to a lot of African countries. You're creating some level of wealth. What it is that it's mostly being built on natural resources, right? As a result, creating knowledge and the skills and the tools where you can have capital investments is really not happening. And then entrepreneurship, everybody is struggling. I do not know any Ghana company that has survived more than 10 years and has created jobs and has gone out of Ghana. So what that then means that it sits on a social structure that all you need is for something catastrophic to happen to disrupt it, right? So if we really want to understand what is going on, this is what I usually ask people to take a look at, right? That you have a social organization, how you relate to each other, how people live in the society, what are the rules that you decide for the society, and based on that, then people are able to build businesses on it, people are able to create knowledge, the skills, capital investment, and then you're able to value your environment and take care of the environment, and then wealth follows, right? So social organization, this black box here is what I want to talk about, because the proposals that I make basically touches on that. That how do we work on that social organization? The way I understand the social organization is this. I assume, or I envision, just like you envision building a computer or a car, right? You have the hardware, which is the social infrastructure, right? The institutions, the law, the property rights, everything that's there. Then comes the software that is needed to actually put on the hardware for it to work, which is your norms, your mindsets, the fairness, responsibility, morality, culture, everything, cooperation, and everything, right? So once you put this on that, now you have a system. The rest is, how do I take the system through time? When changes come, how do I manage it, right? So basically, how does the society change? How does it improve? How does it learn from its mistakes? There's so many judgment debts we've had, but I cannot tell you what lessons we've learned from that, because we are not organized in a way where there's sort of self-learning happening, right? So the changes that I'm going to talk about literally falls into 1, 2, 3 buckets, right? And I'm going to go through some of them really quickly, right? But the system really breaks down when the social infrastructure is misaligned, the values get corrupted, and weak learning processes. So what happened? You have brittle institutions. We have the institutions all right, but the thing is, it's very difficult for it to be effective. Then erosion of trust, right? You have all these short-termism, dependency, tribal issues, right? And then policy chase quick wins, right? We know our manifestos. Yeah, manifesto after manifesto. What happens? You never learn from failures of the systems, right? So let me just, to really understand that social organization and how we really have to make sure that we get a social organization that works, we have to understand this. All human beings are the same. Human beings have a potential for a good society. That's something that we all have to understand, right? And that depends on aligning that social infrastructure with the culture and then having the change process to go through time, right? So there's a work that was done by a guy called Nicholas Christakis. He's actually an anthropologist in Yale. And one of the things that he identified among Peruvians, Africans, and everybody is that for a good society to happen, you need hierarchy. You cannot sacrifice hierarchy. You need social learning. You need the concept of friendship, networks, cooperation, love, identity, and in-group bias, meaning not across groups, but in groups, right, to foster competition and whatnot. So how do we really do interventions to make sure that we are building these capacities, right? Because in the end, we want to have it build institutions that leverage our capacity for love and friendship into broader trust. You know, what Afrobarometer sort of found out, that sort of trusting the person in the other tribe becomes a very difficult thing, right? We want to put institutions that channel our tendency for cooperation into collective action, that structure our acceptance of hierarchy, right? And then embed our desire for impartial rules. So these are carefully thought through how you design these institutions, right? So this is the trust in fellow from Afrobarometer, right? So fellow citizens, somewhat or a lot, right? So if you go back here, you know, do you trust other ethnic groups? Somewhat, right? That's big, right? That's big. We cannot say we will not deal with it, right? If you don't deal with it, someday you're gonna have a major problem, right? So just to summarize, here are the 3 areas that we're gonna have the changes in, right? The social infrastructure, the culture and underlying values, and then how we really manage the progress and sort of move forward, right? So as I go through it, there are 4 ways that I'm sort of going through these changes and thinking through. One is sort of why do we need the reforms that I'm suggesting? Number two, how does the community really get brought together as a result of that? Number three, leadership and institutions, right? And then finally, the challenges and sort of the vision, how do we really manage it, right? So changing the social infrastructure, right? First is standards. Somehow we think we have standards in this country. And I think we all think we do. But here's the thing. Who knows what a village is in Ghana? I don't know what a village is in Ghana. I mean, I drive around to Koforidua and I see names, Kwesi Beto, this, and there's like 5 people here, 2 people here, 1,000 people here, and whatnot. I don't know how we define what a village is in Ghana. So if you want villages to develop, what do you really want them to do, right? I don't know what a village is, so I'm suggesting that there has to be really definitions for what a village is, what our communities are, right? For a village, very good and agriculture and trading, trade and services, manufacturing in towns, and then sort of cities, how they would look like, right? Why is this important? Well, if you have a village standard, you know what services a village should have, right? So when you send money to the district and it has to be spent on the village, there are the gap that it has to basically work on, right? Consistency. You go to a town, you also know exactly what towns should have. Public transport, roads, and whatnot, right? You go to city. Once you define a village, a town, and a city, well then guess what? Now you can look at it and see what the minimum services that we're all trying to build, right? We cannot build a society where some are left behind, because we are just a tapestry of tribes, right? We have enough problems. But standards offer clarity, equity, accountability, and basically a way to look at opportunities across the country. That then allows us to say, okay, how then do we manage ourselves? And we have to manage ourselves in our neighborhoods and our communities, right? So we start out where we say, okay, we think we need to have village managers, we need to have town managers, we need to have mayors. We can't have a case where Accra has a mayor, it's not elected, Kumasi has a mayor, it's appointed, and then some other city has a mayor, but nobody knows how he got there, right? We cannot have that. Then how are we really deciding to live together as using democracy to live together, right? So I will talk about the cultural advisors in a little bit, but this is very, very critical. You have professional leadership at the top, somewhat, but you cannot leave your villages, your neighborhoods, and towns for just, to be wild, wild west. This is why potholes don't get fixed. This is why you see somebody has taken their whole trash and they have dumped it somewhere, right? Because there is nobody managing it, right? In a lot of countries, okay. So in a lot of countries, the district is an organizing unit. We somehow have assumed that the district is a delivery unit, and it's not working. Because you go to your villages, something is broken down, and you're blaming the party. So, obviously, once you do villages and towns and whatnot, then you can actually think through elections, who gets elected, who gets appointed, and all that stuff. The paper that I sent to the president, it had all that written in there, right? But for the first time, you can then have some pathways of accountability where you actually have a group of people who, for a period of time, will be very good at managing villages because their services are predefined and they can really focus on delivery. Once they do that, obviously they become town manager. And then when mayor opportunities come up, you actually have people who have experience in managing people, managing services, delivery of services and all that stuff, right? We see it in other countries, but we see the outcomes. We don't know how hard they've gone there, right? So the second intervention, which is a very tricky one, is really the overlapping structures, right? You and I know we've got about 261 local assemblies. We've got 16 regional houses, and we've got 300 traditional councils. I don't know what they provide for you. I've been to Koforidua. I live in Koforidua. My parents live in Koforidua. I don't know what a traditional council provides for the town, or what regional houses do, or what district assemblies do, right? There's a lot of overlap. So what I am suggesting, which is what a lot of countries have actually done, is this. To eliminate sort of the confusion and conflict for citizens, all of us know that the funds are being inefficiently used. We complain about it, and guess what? Most of us get disconnected from it anyway, right? So what do we do? What I suggested is something called the senior house, right? Now think about it. When government is doing major policy, what does it do? It does a lot of engagement, right? It will go talk to House of Chiefs. It will go whatever. But we have a very interesting way of solving problems, which I think, I don't know whether it's from the way we got educated. You know, I went to Prempeh College. Unfortunately, I was taught English with Chi, you know, but I still came out, you know, I can speak English. But one of the things is that if we decide to build, for example, sovereign fund, our politicians will discuss sovereign fund. Let's build sovereign fund, right? And then 10 years later, you ask them, okay, where is the sovereign fund? Oh, no, we have a sovereign fund. Where is it? Oh, there's a MIF. Oh, and then there's an infrastructure fund. Oh, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and this. So what happens is that we don't really think that the thing is a system. So we end up just duplicating, right? So my proposal that I am basically suggesting is this idea of a senior house, right? So what is the senior house? So think about this. And this is a little bit of a challenging approach, but let me hear me out. Folks will talk about chieftaincy and how do we know. We have House of Chiefs. We have Council of State. The Council of State has changed quite a bit, right? House of Chiefs have changed quite a bit, right? And now we also have Parliament, and then we have who knows which other bodies will come, right? But one of the things that I think we take for granted for making sure a good society emerge as part of being driven by the Constitution is this. My suggestion is that a senior house be introduced that basically has traditional leaders, national experts, and regional representatives, right? So all the time that we talk about having people like Kofi Annan, people who have actually been very good at service and whatnot, how do we use them? The paramount chiefs or minings and whatnot, how do we really structure the society such that we are all sort of building one common good society, right? So you will have a case where traditional leaders take their seats. Now, this is no different from London's House of Lords. House of Lords have 50 seats that are inherited by the Lords. But the inheritance is based on if a Lord dies, their son becomes a Lord but doesn't get into House of Lords, he has to live and deliver and be actually nominated by the president for them to go into the House of Lords, right? So that is how they got rid of all the feudal lords that were running around, right? The thing is, they are all part of the society. How do you design it such that they really actually become engaged, right? And really participate and play the senior role that they do, right? So, and then there are distinguished professionals that basically can. So obviously, if you have 14 traditional leaders, 20 experts, and 16 regional representatives, all you've done is basically a senior house that replaces your Council of State and it replaces your House of Chiefs, National House of Chiefs, right? Then what happens is that they now have legislative review, project oversight, policy initiation and crisis advisory, right? Where now they work with Parliament, right? So Parliament drafts law, passes bills and everything, and it comes through the senior house, reviews it, right? Because they're all there, right? Reviews it and sends it back to Parliament with whatever, right? I worked on the asset, under the previous government, I worked on the asset, basically, management platform for Ghana, right? So I worked on this thing, and it dawned on me that I was the only one that was driving it through government. Of course, I'll go and see the vice president, I'll go and see the head of parliament, I'll go and see everybody, but I had to follow up myself because there were so many people disinterested. Finally, I dropped it sometime only because I was diagnosed with cancer. And I said, shuck, man, I can't do this. And I remember Mangua said, listen, I'll to the finance committee. It went into the finance committee and it never came out. I wasn't dejected because I guess what? I learned a lot about the system. And it's not anybody's fault. What it is that we had not designed our society looking at some of the elements that are so intrinsic in human beings and sort of bring out a good society in them. Right? So here, you would have had a bill that goes to senior house, gets reviewed, not by just me and somebody else in the whole, which is what happens. A lot of siloed stuff is happening, right? You hear a bill, it comes out, it gets published. And then guess what? Nobody basically talks about it. Right? So you get the senior house, and then now parliament and regional coordination. We are all confused about regional ministers. I don't know whether we should call them regional ministers. For me, I think the president needs a regional representative to sort of help coordinate stuff, right? Because you really need to manage and build the country from the ground up, right? I will provide these slides actually for everybody who attended here, so that's fine. So in the long run, what you actually have done is that you are bridging the traditional and sort of the professional governance in the country where literally village managers concentrated on really building villages for us. I want to be able to drive through Ghana just like Germany and see villages that really have the amenities that they need to have. Town managers, mayors, and then you have the senior house and parliament working together, right? So obviously, chiefs then become the cultural advisors, providing cohesion and mediation, right? And then professional sort of management there, right? So now, for that to work, guess what? We need to decentralize the money. I don't know what you mean. We need to decentralize the money because what happens is that, we have a consolidated fund which is centralized. It's like over-centralized, right? Now, we hurt ourselves because what happens is that once you've defined what a village and town and everything should have, you literally have the needs and what the people need to be provided for, right? So my thing is that the consolidated fund, you could actually change the architecture of it and how you do it, where you start out by regions and localities getting a percentage of what they have derived. So these are just examples that I've given, right? So you basically say, okay, 20% will be put back, whatever you derived. And then the rest is really performance grants, conditional grants, and equitable share, right? You're trying to make sure you develop the things that you believe that every village and every citizen really should have, right? So the whole basis of that is to basically say, how do we really make sure that high revenue districts and low revenue districts, there's some kind of a way where, it's being, and the system has a way built in it that basically says, well, listen, money automatically comes back as you collected them a certain percentage, so you basically are able to build it, right? The other social intervention in the infrastructure side is ministries, right? I don't know if you want to be like the UK. If you go to the UK, they've gone into the Europe and come back. The real problem is that the main economy of the UK sits in London, right? main economy of Ghana sits in Accra. So how do we really do it? My proposal is this, that we really think through how we create local economies that really can work for the country and everybody, right? Your ministries, there's no reason why ministerial headquarters should actually not be aligned, with the regions to really create the local economy and local ecosystem for things to work, right? So you could have where in Western region, Takoradi, you have fisheries and whatnot, right? My people in Elmina will love this, right? Because they don't have to come to Accra to basically, you have presidential affairs based in Accra. You can have tourism in Ho. Basically, something that you could talk through and say, where do we really get Ghanaians to really engage and really create the value system that we need for the economy, right? Then comes the software. So the software is sort of the mindset part. And this is where it gets controversial. But please hear me out. Hear me out. Because I honestly think that we've got an opportunity. Ghana is an incredible place. The first thing that comes to mind is that Ghana News Agency. You and I know that the way we are receiving our news right now, we go Facebook and there's a picture and somebody has said something, they've put it there. And the person probably in the picture probably never said that. But guess what? We all believe it and we go and we argue and argue and argue and argue. What does that do? It basically destroys trust. It makes us basically get into all kinds of arguments that doesn't help democracy or doesn't help us really to live together, right? So how did we allow Ghana News Agency to actually fail and disappear, right? In this modern world, the Russians have TASS. Everybody has this. The Chinese have their own. How do you get left without a news agency that presidency, parliament, and everybody actually uses as the sources? There is social media, private media, public, and then government, right? And everything is just basically we're getting a problem where trust issues, daily news, people are sucking it up. And then, of course, guess what? Fake news. Right? Fake news. So my thing is, one of the things we have to do is basically say, okay, we have to revive GNA and really get to a point where we have independence and funding for a statutory body, and then where there's collaborative fact-checking, impartiality, there's audience-first delivery, and all this stuff. BBC has been around for a long time. Every time I read what they write in Ghana in pidgin English, I get upset. But it's somebody's platform, right? As a people, we need a GNA. Now comes education. John Dewey was the one who first wrote about democracy and education. We take it for granted. We all have sat in classrooms. I grew up in Ashtown. I wasn't supposed to end up at MIT. I had a funny story, and for somehow I ended up in MIT because I actually made a mistake. They said, write an essay. I did not know how to write an essay. I drew a picture. I said, this is how I will illustrate it. And I drew a picture. It was that picture that they found so different that I got admitted. We have to be able to get to a point. Every child in Ghana is like that. And so that education we need for democracy to work, unfortunately, I don't think is happening in Ghana. We have RME. The reason why I got clued into RME was because a child and his father were having a fight. The child was upset about RME class. He went in RME, chose the traditional track, came back home, asked his father if his mother is a witch. And they had an argument. The father actually had kept the test that the child was using. And in that test, I don't know who and how he ended up there, but it had defined a witch as a short black woman. So obviously, if you see Salaga, wherever they have the witch camp, whatnot, it's easy to fit. It may not be anything big, but what it is that That is not what you're getting for democracy. Even if you teach the kids physics and they're good at physics, that won't help you with democracy. Democracy requires civic and moral education, right? And what happens is that, I mean, if we go back, we all can say we struggle with discipline, civic duties. There's digital stuff that's coming that we're all fighting online. But the current RME, there's a huge overemphasis on religious stuff. I don't know if you guys have gone through. I have gone through. It says the most important people you have to respect in society are the pastors, malams, and the fetish priests. I wish it would tell me, oh no, your president, your head of parliament, and whatnot, knowing how much hard they have worked and gotten there, that we all need to emulate. But that's not what it says. So it has a limited civic education. The idea of rights and duties of institutions are almost missing, right? So that is a big, big gap, right? Let me skip this and, So when it comes down to it, what we actually want is ethics, citizenship, and leadership to really, really be captured there, right? So I go through in my paper and basically say, hey, you know what? There are some themes that we really need to make sure is touched on, right? Here, 12 things that I put down as if actually were taught in a new curriculum, right? Then comes what I'll call jus soli. Now, what is jus soli? If I ask you where you're from, if somebody asks me where I'm from, these days I tell them I'm from Elmina. Why? Because that's where I was born. My dad is from Kwapong. My mom is from Takrady. But I was born in Elmina. I'm from Elmina. So that is citizenship by place of birth. Here's the thing. In Ghana, again, ambiguity and confusion, lack of clarity surrounds all of us. You mention someone, oh, I'm from Kwewu. He's never been to Kwewu, but he's from Kwewu. When they do census and they count Kwewu people, he's not counted in Kwewu. He's counted in Accra. So what it is he's messing up Accra's budget, and then he's messing up Kwewu's budget. Right? So a lot of countries literally have moved away from this whole defining hometown by ancestry, right? And if you look at most countries, this is by location, by city where you're born, and then Ghana, where by ancestry is high, right? It is very tough if we're all going to really build a society that's good to really have that disconnect, right? So obviously, we need to sort of get to a point where in our systems, ID cards and everything, we begin to basically say, listen, guys, we need to, I mean, the youth are actually sort of doing it, by the way. Your children basically said, listen, I've never go to Ogwai, I've never go to Boso, whatever the Boso is, I don't care, So it will happen, but what it is that we cannot stand still, right? Then comes this problem. So this is a very, very big problem that every country has. What I'll call the Tower of Babel problem. Ghana's got about 70 languages, right? And recently there was all kinds of confusion about we should change this, we should change this, we should change Akwaba to whatever. The thing is, it's all an indication of something that we have not been very good at doing. We have 70 different languages, and we have multiple tribes living together. But we don't even teach Ghana history. A lot of people, you ask them, they say, oh, I'm from Ashanti. I'm Ashanti. And I'm like, okay, you're Ashanti. Where are you from? And it's okay, well, they said we are from the ground. They don't know the history. The reason why Okonfanochi said you are from the ground when you're asked was not because somehow you're from the ground. What it is that they had brought together all the different tribes, brought them together, the Fantis, people from the north, to fight in Team Jackery. So when they established the state, people were asking, but you didn't come from here. So they stopped the whole mess. And they said, listen, from now on, nobody should ever ask anyone where they came from. If you're ever asked, say, I'm a man of the ground. That is how it got. But we are not taught our history. Nobody is taught the history of Ghana, history of where anything, right? We have not done the work. So guess what has happened? The languages now have become a divisive stuff, right? So my thing is this. It has also affected something. When we see basically literacy, we see a number called 70, 80. And people think, oh, wow, we're okay, we're 80% in literacy in Ghana. That is good. But nobody gets detail to understand what is happening. The literacy number that you see, the 70, 80, is in all languages. If you were to take literacy just in English and fluency, you drop down to about 28%. And the cause of that, it's not that people cannot study, but the different languages, most countries that moved into solving this problem did it because a second language helps the society also adopt the official language very, very well. So what I am proposing is that if we really are serious, we adopt what I'll call the three-tongue model that a lot of countries also use to solve this problem. Now, what is that? This is what's going to test our ingenuity and ability to actually develop as a nation, right? Your mother tongue is not going anywhere. So when you're born as a child, whatever tongue you speak, you always speak it at home and you learn it. And then English will be your level 3. In between, if we are very courageous, we create a National Institute of Language and create that second language. I put a bunch of linguists together and I asked them to do it for Ghana. And they did it. They produced a 500-page document that literally, I had no idea the commonalities under our languages. You know, when you hear, Gapme say Imba, Meba, there are a lot of those in the languages. So the whole idea is to basically create a common ground for all Ghanaians where this is what you can learn in school if you want to. You don't have to. But it's what the government will support in school. And guess what? It has Chi, Ga, Ewe, and Dagbani as the basis. It does not replace your mother tongue. What it is that it allows us to have a shared identity and reduce a lot of the friction around the society such that we can get to a point where comprehension is pretty, Now, someone will say, why not use tree? Well, this is it. I mean, the elements of tree, actually, you find them in the other places also. Indonesia, Tanzania did it. Tanzania had a whole bunch of languages it could have used, right? But it decided to use Swahili and then a version of Swahili. And guess what? They've been fine. So this is like a hybrid frame. So if I were actually to sort of give you an example, if I say in English, I'm going to tell you something beautiful, right? In a new language, you'll be mebekan wo ade nyonyo. Mebekan wo ade nyonyo. Right? Now, when you hear it, if you haven't learned it, you know it has elements of what you are used to. So learning it becomes easy, right? But this is what basically is going to help us. Then the last one, how do we really move forward? And here we all have pain. We all have pain. We have the National Development Planning Commission. I have gone there, spoken to them. They've shown me Excel sheets. They've shown me documents. They've shown me a lot of work they have done. But I kid you not, I don't know any president who will put an important project that needs to be executed and say, National Development Planning Commission, please execute this. It doesn't happen. Every Asian company that had reached takeoff had one execution development corporation that they used, and they were good at just doing projects. They knew of all the projects. The last time IMF Fiscal Monitor did a study and Ghana was included, and I talked to them, they dropped Ghana because they could not find a database of all the projects that are being worked on. They could not find basically an asset base to even say how much the government owns, right? We have had a system that basically needs to change. Now, how does it need to change? Well, if we have a National Development Corporation, a sovereign fund, central bank, a National Institute of Languages, that gives us a very centralized way to really build consensus, much like the Asian tigers did, to develop, right? So what the Asian tigers remembered was this. It says the creation of a competent, powerful, but accountable group of technocrats is one of the most original and successful of the institutional innovations that distinguish high-performing East Asian economies from patterns characteristics of where Latin America and Africa. And it is true. If we do not really get a proper development corporation that is able to basically have authority to run projects, have faithful execution, working with parliament and ministries, you will have this siloed people running around like the bucket brigade problem we have, right? So why do we have to change the NDPC? You think about it, there's a whole fragmented planning and oversight of projects across the country. I mean, we all see them. When I wrote my report last year to the president, I had pictures of a whole bunch of projects, some of them that basically has been around for years. Almost 300 million spent annually on basically overlapping development bodies, right? 40% of government projects are delayed or abandoned due to weak planning or oversight. You know, we somehow need to fix this, right? And that is the execution piece where you need something like a National Economic Development Corporation that actually attracts the best of your people, put them all in one place, work through laser-focused. Parliament can go to them. Parliament can have all kinds of questions, you know, and then you can think about, again, the problem that we solve. We said we wanted development corporation. What did we do? We do the Atlantic Development Corporation. We do one in the Sahel. We do different development agencies that are not connected to each other. That is very inefficient. If we did a National Development Corporation that actually has a Sahel, a South and West, East, and headquarters working together, then you know every major project that's of national significance basically gets managed for this. Accountability and everything shows up there, right? So what happens? Obviously, over time, we will be expecting that somehow project delays and abandonment rate will go down, right? We will have targets that we'll look at. We then basically, you know, this whole idea of let's assess value for money, right? You hear something. The question is, okay, who's assessing this value for money? You hear, okay, Ministry of Finance is doing some of them, and then you hear Ministry of Energy also is doing some of them, and then you hear the consultant has been hired to do something like that. All these distractions in the life of a nation is just wasted time that basically creates challenges for all of us to fight and really separate us, right? So being able to actually get to a point where we're basically like, okay, we know exactly where all the projects are, which projects that are being, you know, Ministry of Finance is working on, all being tracked from any part. It's very, very critical, right? So I know I've gone through it real fast, but I'll get the sheets to you so that you can take a look at it. But my whole point when I wrote this proposal is to really say, okay, there's something that we have not been doing. And it actually goes much deeper. it really has to do with the social organization, how we are organized as a society, and some of the lack of overlaps that we don't have, some of the ambiguities that we have. We don't know what a village is, we don't know what a town is. That creates major issues. If I'm in a village, if I want to actually move to a village in Ghana, what amenities should I be expecting? Because if I knew what amenities I should be expecting, then it's easy for me as a citizen, when there's a village manager, to get in. China, a 1.7 billion people. I had a meeting that was part of me understanding how they do stuff. And in that meeting was the village managers and a whole bunch of stuff. And it had a central person coming down to join them. And it was amazing the way they conducted themselves. Why can't we be like that? Because as the study says, every human being has a potential in them to actually create a good society. Hierarchy, networks, friendship, all these things are there. But what it is that if we don't look at the infrastructure, the social infrastructure, if we don't look at the software, how we think, what we're teaching the kids, that is very critical. I at times I see video of kids actually just fighting, or even older people just fighting among themselves on the street. And I ask myself, did they sit in a Ghanaian classroom? Right? We have to get to a point where we differentiate ourselves, because somehow the society that we are creating, we really, really are choosing democracy because we really believe that, And the last thing I'll say is this. Companies that I go into, every time they have problems, they say, oh, yeah, we have a policy on this. Oh, we have a policy on this. And I just attended one company where they were talking about some issues, and they said they had policies on that, right? And so I called all the managers, 50 of them. And they said, oh, yeah, we have a compliance policy and everything. So I asked them, I brought the compliance policy out, and I think they thought if they said they had read it, I would open it and ask a question. And all of them, nobody had read it. And it's been about 5 years since it was created. We do the same thing with our laws. Parliament passes a law. Idea. How many people actually even read it? Or how many people actually... it's very challenging. We don't have a GNA. If we had a GNA, then every law that comes out of Parliament, guess what? GNA will basically whatever. Now, every law that comes out of Parliament, what do you have? You have a whole bunch of outlets that try to spin it one way or the other and whatnot, right? So, with that, let me end here and then open it up for questions. Where's let me acknowledge minority leaders in the house. So in case you want to say something, let me. Okay. So he will say something before we leave. But let me open it up for questions. You want to?
Thank you very much. I'm Kingsley Ohenobamwa. I represent Defense Network for Democracy and also a convener for Santamaya Foundation for Africa Peace and Development. Mine is on the house, the senior house. We have the National House of Chiefs as an enshrined constitutional provision, which has all the regional houses of chiefs and the traditional councils. How can we have this? I want to ask, the senior house, is it going to be a new architecture, or we are supposed to scrap the House of Chiefs and replace it with the senior house and the national the Council of States? How can we go by this, or do we make them as a new institutional body that will work side by side with the existing as enshrined in the Constitution? Thank you very much.
Okay, that's a very good question. So you remember the way that often at times we solve problems because we don't look at democracy as a way for us to live together is that you have somebody else and come and set up a new one. No, what we are saying is that the House of Chiefs somehow was created with a certain purpose in mind, that there are senior people that somehow can give advice and all this and whatnot. Well, guess what? They also sit outside government, sort of, if you actually want to look at it, and then you, because of that, guess what you did? You went and created the Council of State to supposedly, the Council of State and these guys actually, technically, should be one layer in the same room talking with each other to really streamline it, And I what the British did was very, very smart, because they were having a lot of feudal fights when they created the House of Lords, right? Now, we don't want to do the Japanese version where they had the shoguns who had actually armies, where one emperor comes along and say, hey, listen, there are too many chiefs, and basically kills all of them, right? That's in the modern world, that's not what we do. But to me, I think we've got an opportunity to really recognize that if you actually want a good society, hierarchy has to be understood. But hierarchy could not be diffused. And it could not be ambiguous, right? Let's really do it such that it's very clear how our most senior people and our leading traditional people work with Parliament, right? To really build a society where, all these tribes forge a common vision and a common sort of shared goal, right? Yeah.
Good. My name is William Ofori. Just to kick off, as I was entering this place, I saw a pen on the floor at the entrance where the security man was. So I stopped and asked him, why is the pen on the floor? He was very irritated, and he said, you see, all the people who have come to pass, they're all university graduates and they hold all kinds of titles. But I put the pen there, they use it and they drop it, and it falls, and they walk away. Nobody has even had the presence of mind to question it. So I think my basic problem is that the whole country, our issue starts with indiscipline and attitudinal change. We have police visibility, but the motorbikes, and right in front of them, people are committing offenses. There are no consequences. So indiscipline, attitudinal change, if we don't fix that, we can't fix anything. I like what you said about NDPC, but you used Asian examples. I don't know how many of you have been to Rwanda. There is one entity in Rwanda. It's called RDB.
Right.
If you go to Rwanda Developmental Board, any project of national importance, you go through RDB. You don't need to know a minister. You don't need to know a chief director. If the project is laudable, RDB will fix all your appointments, all your meetings. You will walk out of Rwanda in 48 hours. Game done. Why can't we, back to what you said, do that? And my little conundrum now is on what you talked about, the structure. Local assemblies, districts, constituencies, they all have people who are all holding titles. How are all these working together with one agenda and one outcome? Thank you.
Yeah. So I worked so I used to be a senior vice president in New York Economic Development Corporation. So at the time of Bloomberg, I went in there, restructured it, and was sort of on the board and all this stuff. But I'll tell you this, even a country as advanced as New York is, if you go to New York now, you see the Fashion Week, Fashion District, the Brooklyn Bridge, all these, whatever, it was done by New York Economic Development Corporation. They were all approved by their parliament or their Senate, and then carried out by them. Why is it done by them? Well, they're able to raise capital, they're able to oversee the projects from front to end and whatnot, right? On the question of the indiscipline, right? I'll tell you, I will encourage you guys to actually look into the RME course, because a lot of people have not. Just look into it and imagine. You start out Ghanaian schools with probably about 5 million kids. Imagine 5 million kids taking this every year. 5 million kids taking this course every year, where there is no thought, no emphasis on how you relate to your neighbor, how you understanding. You know, my son came to Ghana, you know, and was dealing with a lot of the kids and was asking them questions that they're like, oh, we don't, you know. But he was asking the questions sort of, oh, how does the government run and all this. He was like 15. But guess what? In the U.S., you take civics from grade 6 all the way till you finish. Every year you take civics. You know about the U.S. government system. You know about senators. You know about representatives, House of. You know about all that, right? And it's not by chance. It is because they know that's how you make democracy work. When each, just imagine it. I mean, just imagine. Even us, if we get a dog in the house, right? If you know, this friend of mine took his wife to a party, and the wife came back upset. Why? Oh, I did not know it was a dog party that they went to, right? Well, the dog had been trained and had reached a point where it was behaving well in the house. And the owner said, we'll throw a party for him. So just imagine if the dog had not been trained, he'll probably be killed out of the house, right? So in that similar vein, we all run families. You know, if we want, we cannot have it be a case where you say, oh, just raise your kids in your house and be done with it. We need to really think about how the average Ghanaian, what is the strength of the average Ghanaian when you educate them, right? So that piece, I honestly think that we haven't done a lot on the bottom, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. I'm Nana Kwapong of CDD-Ghana. Sorry. Yes, so I have just two areas I want you to touch. The first one is the proposal of retention of percentage of funds generated from the districts. We have a policy in the country. Hitherto, we're having royalties collected or generated from specific areas, with the traditional leaders there retaining a chunk of it, realizing the unequal development in the country. Now we have national collection and allocation such that deprived communities also have something to develop. I'm not sure which categories of funds that the local authorities or local areas could collect. Does it include even oil, gold resources and other things, and they're retaining? And what will happen to other deprived communities where even the common IGF allocated to them for generation, they are not even able to generate something to facilitate their development? Don't you think it's going to widen development gap in the country? So I want you to go into that for me. Your standardization from village to town to city, is it not in same language modernized in the decentralized system, where we have the metro comprising 250,000 above population and have 4-tiered administrative structures? Municipal from 95,000 have 3-tier administrative structure, and also districts with 75,000 population, also 3-tier administrative structure. Your village, town, and city, is it not the same thing that's modernized into a decentralized language? Oh, okay. All right. So on the first one, in terms of basically, you have to define what you as a city, a village, and a town is expected to have. Because I'm the citizen. The citizen needs to have clarity on that, right? In my town that I live in, I know trash incineration is required, right? So once you have that clarity, then it's easier to then think about the budget and the money and all these stuff and whatnot. Now, at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to make sure that the money is decentralized in the sense that whatever you believe they should have, there's the resources, right? You have some places where they have more, some places that may not have any. And this is why you manage the gap, right? Where some states, you know, if you take the US, for example, right? New York sends money to a lot of the states, right? And other places. But it's something that we ourselves have to sit down and come back with, right? Because there's a perception that money goes from here to consolidated fund and we don't know what happens.
Even though there's something that's happening and whatnot, all it is that the delays and all this stuff. So if you want democracy to work, you need clarity for citizens to participate. And where there's lack of clarity, we see how we improve it, right? Now, on the how you sort of said, as I said before, most countries, the district is a coordinating function. Most countries, they don't tag a district as what it is that the district is a coordinating function for a bunch of cities and towns and villages, right? In our case, we've made it where literally we are assuming that they can manage a town and a village, and it's not happening because frankly, they don't live there, right? So we sort of have to think about why are people feeling like there's Accra and there's nobody here to work with me, right? If you get to, let's say, the China model, they know exactly who the village manager is, right? You want to get to a point where it's very direct, no confusion, whatever, right? Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Ishmael Niyamanododu. I'm one of the directors at the 24 Economy Secretariat. I'm very fascinated by your presentation because in a sense, you've not only disrupted my mind, you have actually given me a certain pathway of how we can develop, which essentially we've talked about it, but have not really been very deliberate about it. I'd like to go to your very basic point about getting a social organization right, and then everything follows. And making reference to one of the points that you raised about literacy, ability to read and write, and being able to communicate, share ideas. That I feel that one of the key parameters for being able to get a social organization right is our ability to understand communication, understand each other, believe in, really understand the vision. Where are we going, essentially? In a country where less than 30% can actually read anything, as you alluded to, whether in English language or in local language. And therefore, you have a society where all these brilliant ideas are captured in the letter. So if I can't read, then how do I understand you? And if I cannot gain the knowledge and the skills to decipher the complexities of the things you have projected today, how do I come to the conclusion that the basis of our development is to start from A to move to B? So the question I want to ask is, how do we address this key critical question of understanding each other in this context where 70% cannot read, write, neither in local language or in English? Tanzania overcame this because I worked in Tanzania as a UN diplomat for many years then, and everything is taught in Swahili. So even if the person hasn't been to school, he or she can actually read Swahili. So you can engage in meaningful conversations such as this. In the US, there are Black American societies who have not been to good schools, but they can read a bit of the English and write them somehow, even if the grammar is bad. So there's a basis for being able to agree and understand a vision. This is not the case here. How do we overcome this critical hurdle? Thank you.
Right. So he's hit on something that I think speaks to the core of. Honestly, if we truly want to be at some point an advanced country, we also have to have the capacity to make certain decisions that are not expected of us, right? Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, when they got out of the Soviet Union, it was all their own language. They rewrote their constitution. One of the things they put in was that English will be a second language. And they had never spoken English. Why? Because they wanted to serve Europe. They wanted to be part of Europe and whatnot. Today, if you meet somebody from Latvia, they've invested because they see why it matters. South Korea, when it became independent, it had a whole bunch of Japanese words in its language and all that stuff. It set up a national language institute that cleaned it up. So now, can we do that? Well, if we can't do that, then guess what? By default, you cannot be like Latvia. You cannot be, because nobody, you'll be limited in your engagement with the rest of the world and just how much goods you can sell them and how much trade you can do with them. So it's something that really is upon us. For me, if we decide that we will have a National Institute of Language, and its whole role will be basically how it gets communication done, right? I mean, we run, there's a festival going on in Cape Coast right now, right? There's a festival going on in any part of the world, but meanwhile, the country doesn't even have one calendar for the festivals, right? Everybody's doing their own thing, right? So this is what the capacity to build a good society in us is, right? So I would say, if it's very difficult for us to understand each other when we are angry, then guess what? The only way 1,000 years from now we'll be around is if we make a hard decision. And this is why I propose this, and that we basically found a way to lay up a language together, our own language, such that we can invest in it and have people, Networks are very incredible with societies. If kids want to speak a certain language, guess what? You wake up one day and understand what your kids are saying to you, because they would have decided, and that's what influences, and that's a part of society. We just have not been very serious about how it drives us, right? I mean, and I'm glad you're also from 24-hour economy. One of the things that I had always said, and I did told one of these ministers, one of the things I like to see is a legislation in Parliament that basically everybody has to pay their bills within a certain period of time. 30 days. After 30 days, if you don't pay it, GRA will charge you an amount of money, right? That will help the 24-hour economy. If you go to Denmark, you can go into the system and see the companies.
Take one more question from Professor Bafo, and you want to take a question?
I have one. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we'll take two questions, and then we can. So, Prof.
Anyway, thank you very much. I think, let me commend you, if you don't mind me saying that, because this presentation has been very enlightening and very provocative at the same time. Enlightening because I see a lot of wisdom in what you have proposed. And it's provocative because you are really pushing us to rethink what we are used to. And I find it very good. I also like the way you have simplified democracy for us. A way of what? Living together.
Right.
As simple as that. How do we live together in such a way that there is peace, there is progress, there's understanding, there's cohesion? Simple. And that's why perhaps in the Constitution we have created all these institutions and structures to do that. But certainly we see that we are not achieving it. And that's the provocation that I think you have given us. Let me see. What I think is that perhaps there are so many things you said in my mind. Let's see. Let me see. First of all, the idea of the education is critical.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot successfully create a society where there's no common understanding and appreciation of the key elements of that society. And the educational structure we have today is completely irrelevant to what we are seeking to achieve. So I like the idea of creating that structure, having a new language deriving from a collection of the languages. And I believe that will help solve so many things. more importantly for me is how you're also seeking to integrate tradition, culture, into the modern democratic structure. And that tells me that, in fact, being like the Americans or the Asians,
No.
not at all, but using our own resources, cultural, traditional, as well as other resources, to create a system where everybody can live together. That's the way I capture your presentation.
Exactly.
And it comes, of course, with a lot of risks and tension in the various, what I would say, the variables that you are forcing us to look at. And finally, I will say, how do you present this for our thinkers and our policymakers to even begin to understand? Because if I see what's going on now, both the political elite and the educated elites, I think we need a major shakeup in our thinking. Otherwise, this beautiful idea will not stand. People have developed vested interest in what exists. So change is difficult to come back. So I'm just sympathizing with you.
I mean, so here's the thing. The reality is this, guys. 10 years from now, I have taken a look at data since 1847. Almost every 10 years, there's a major crisis that disrupts the world. There's one overdue. So let's not kid ourselves. We World War I, II, III did not hit us. Nixon's dropping did not hit us, but we all felt the effects of that. COVID touched us. We felt the effect of that. We are riding on the wave of what is happening in the world. The ones who will survive 1,000 years from now are the ones who built a fortress. So if we don't take it seriously, we'll just bop along until one day we find ourselves, basically ineffective in basically creating incomes for our people, right?
I think the Honorable say he has some remarks, so he will do that after everything. Yes. So you want to take one more question?
Yeah. So, Honorable.
So thank you, Doc, for that thought-provoking submission. I have some few remarks. My first time of being at CDD, I got an invitation. My day was packed, but I said I would have to make it and participate in this program. And let me commend CDD for your various initiatives aimed at enriching our democracy. Without the works of civil societies, I don't think we'll survive in our journey to a better Ghana. I have listened to the very point that you've raised, but let me start with where I disagree. I just disagree fundamentally on one thing about the creation of a second chamber, whether a chamber of elites to enhance legislation. That I disagree, because I believe that as a unitary state, what we have is to provide the necessary resources to boost performance. Parliament currently has various committees, and it does its work at various committee levels, aside the mainstream plenary that we know. So if we look at the plenary mainly for the optics and think that, well, we are not doing enough, therefore there is a need for another one for the purpose of legislation or oversight, I disagree. I think that Council of State in its present form could be more proactive. We passed the enactment to support them, so I think we should look at it from that angle. Now, on the various points that I agree, and I would proceeded with the point made by Prof, that we need a shake-up. There seemed to be some apathy of a sort. There seemed to be some inertia. And we want to behave that the business as usual thing, and it's been of major concern. The citizen thinks that the political leader is stealing. So when he or she gets opportunity, there is some impunity, no accountability. So the political leader is not ensuring that the citizen is accountable. The citizen also thinks that the political leader is amassing wealth. So it's a survival business. And that, for me, is a concern. If you look at all the social intervention programs that have been rolled out, from the Rawlings Poverty Alleviation Fund, where people in the private sector, informal private sector, were being given opportunities to trade, I don't think anybody ever paid. Kufuor came, continued, introduced Maslock. People got opportunity. Professor Mills of blessed memory. It continued all the way to Nanado, where we create an opportunity for empowerment. But these don't get paid back. And these people walk free. But then also it becomes a political patronage, because the person thinks that I voted for you. If you've given me 10,000 to do my business, why do you want it back? I have my own example of initiating some economic empowerment programs in my constituency, and they see it as a freebie. And you ask yourself, should you sue the person, take the person to court, and still expect to survive politically? So we have an attitude problem as a country that it appears none of us is having the courage to approach it, so that we do a shake-up that would benefit all of us in the long term. So I had a boat, and then the sailors would only come and say that they have a problem with the engine, and then I have to pay. But I realized that they also put up some houses. I said, but you say you don't get a fish, but how come you have a house? They think that the MP who has done it for them, so they don't really care. Then you go into taxi work and pay. I went to Suzuki. I bought some cars, guaranteed. And then they are not paying, and they don't care. If you seize the cars, you have a problem. So we have a system problem. And sorry, you are from 24-hour economy. It's a beautiful idea. I'm a private sector person, and anything for anything for the private sector is good. And I know at the heart of this program is the support that you will need to provide the people. But my concern is that how many people would want to even pay back if we don't put a system in place to make them responsible? The problem we have, unemployment, a lot of our youths out there, they don't have the space. But can we rally around the table and, as Prof says, let's have a shake-up where we'll tell our people that when the money comes, when you get the empowerment and you don't pay back, it leaks the whole purse, and all of us suffer in the long run. So can we start a culture of collective responsibility where the country is moving a certain direction? And it doesn't matter whether you're in government or you're in opposition. If we don't get that right, MPP will come tomorrow, the same thing, and it get to a point where everybody would give up. So I'm happy with this, and I believe that we can really start something. You are in government now, so if you initiate, you can be assured of my support. Then the cultural thing. Yes, our democracy is a way of life. I agree. But some 6 years ago, I triggered a conversation and I didn't get any support. In fact, I was surprised the feedback I got from a lot of people from the upper middle class, that the international schools in this country they don't teach any Ghanaian language. And you are US, in the West, they teach the civics. In our country today, I went to Kivas last week, and as final year student did not even know about the ministries. He was talking about Ministry for Jobs, Employment and Labor, and he was saying something else, and he didn't feel apologetic. I said, you are a final year student, you don't know about your ministers, you don't know about this, and we don't care. So there is no connect, and people feel that, well, there's not even any compulsion to learn the Ghanaian language. We all speak in the English at home, and then our children are in international schools, and there is that disconnect with our culture, so they don't even appreciate anything Ghanaian. Why wouldn't they come and ask, is my mommy a witch? Because they say any short black woman is a witch, correct? Yes, but if, as it were, we are taught that child about our values at home, our culture, he would have debated that theory or that concept without coming home to ask whether or not it's true. I would end on this rather disturbing point. The way our country is today, it's like, okay, we get the power to come and show you where the power lies. We are using the power. When we were in office, NPP, few of us took it upon ourselves to go the way of bridging up and ensuring that this extremist type of approach where power is used to punish, attack, and hurt others are somewhat minimized if we don't get rid of it. There are a lot of things, I wouldn't just want to mention them, that we used back channel to deal with it and to address them. It appears to me, and in all sincerity, that the goodwill for reset is being taken for granted, and the reset is rather more or less for punishment being used to get a victor's justice, being used to hurt others or to justify certain actions. Why would Ghanaians be sacked when somebody is employed 2 years, 3 years, he's in office, working, public servant? The crime is that you were recruited under a different regime. And we say that we're practicing democracy. Why would a Chief Justice be fired and somebody is justifying? And you say you've received 3 petitions. You've referred them to Council of State. And then you write to the person that, look, these are the charges. You refer it to a committee. A committee made up of 2 justices of the Supreme Court. And then you are hearing the petition. You are done with first petition. And you say that the other 2, you've not heard them yet. Yet you've completed the report. And then you're saying that the person should be sacked. And within an hour, the person is sacked. And then you say that there was a travel, the husband and daughter. And you don't explain that there was a policy by the judiciary. So how can the Chief Justice, for instance, write a memo that my husband be paid a per diem? And you have a Justice of the Supreme Court writing this against his colleague that the husband has been paid a per diem, so the person should be sacked. I can assure you, all of us in this chamber, that if we do not speak up and end some of these things, 2028, should MPP win, some extremists would also come and say the person who is the Chief Justice should be fired. Did we go or did we come? So I would want to encourage our friends in government, watch some of the excesses. The fact that it happened yesterday is not a justification for it to be repeated. We must end the cycle of you do me, I do you. I've never been happy with some of these things. It doesn't help our democracy. Around us, I'm a member of ECOWAS Parliament. I've seen democracy failing in the sub-region. And the way we are going, if we are not careful, we may not have it. Because the young ones, when I walk around, I listen to them. The fact is that they don't even trust us as a political elite. They don't trust us as the NDC, MPP, these people. Give yourself another 10 years with this social media. One day, you see that they say they are tired of this democracy and they don't even care what the alternative is. So let's be careful the way we are wielding the power. But I can assure you that for those of us who are in the minority, ours is not to obstruct government. I've been a leader of government business before. I've been in government and I know how difficult it is. My job is to work with government and be constructive in my criticism, not merely because we have to come to power, try to mess things around. That's not my style as a minority leader. So let's work together. Let's use the back channels. Let's make democracy in Ghana attractive. And let's stop this nonsense of destroying ourselves and breaking down institutions all for political convenience. It's not going to help. On that note, I would want to conclude by urging CDD to continue its advocacy. Of course, sometimes you come under attack. It's part of it. You are used to it. Not everybody would agree with you. But we work together on this this matter that went to the Supreme Court. I've not heard your voice on it, on the, whether or not, not you as a person, I'm talking about CDD. Whether, because you are the, you are the face of CDD. So I have been asking, why should somebody be punished because of a certain orientation and has to face a jail term? We can preach our values and say that this is not it. But we must find a way of dealing with matters without always looking at the political convenience of it. That said, I would want to thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to further engagement. Thank you so much.
So let me answer some things that he I think some issues that he raised so that I can clarify. So one of the things that minority leaders said was that the creation of a second house, right? So we are not proposing a creation of a second house, right? That's not what we are proposing, right? We already have a council of state that the president consults, right? And we have a house of chiefs that the president also consults and whatnot, right? All we're saying that you create one house that brings all those minds together. It's not a legislative house. It's a house that you consult, right? But one of the things that I want to make very, very clear is this. You know, and this is very interesting because we had an opening. Remember, Julius Debler had wanted to give. So his deputy came and gave a speech, right? And then a deputy also came and spoke, right? So one of the things that you notice that when both of them spoke, they actually speak in what I'll call the weed of things that is happening. If we actually going to change the country and have a constitution that is functional, we cannot speak in the weed of the things that are happening. We have to step back and really say, okay, what is solid about culture is this. Culture has basic assumptions that we work on and we agree. If you speak in this weed of things, the failures of the society begin to define how you create the institutions. You begin to want to do certain things because of the failures of the past. And this is what then gets you into what I call a clusterfuck. And you will circle and circle and circle, and you get to a point where you don't know how to get it. What I'm trying to do here is put aside, step back, and think about what really creates a good society. And say, okay, how do we build this from this? You know, it's not really, I'm not asking us to litigate. There's so many issues you can litigate. You know, this is why, unfortunately, Putin basically keeps saying that let's solve the Ukraine problem by addressing the root problems. You cannot, there's so many things that we all can fight about, but I'm asking us to basically step back, say, okay, what is a good society? What really are the key elements that really we have to make sure we worked on? You know, if we don't do that, we can all chase our tails all the time, right? So with that, I think, Prof, you wanted to say something? Oh, okay. Oh, so let me give to her, and then so we can close out then.
Thank you. Let's give it up for. You can have it in there. No, we have to keep the time. I have to keep the time. Sorry. Thank you all for. Thank you both to Hene Aku Kwapong. Please let's give it up to him again. And also, let's give it up for the minority leader, Honorable Afenyo Makin, for his speech. So we have come to the end of the proceedings today. I was trying to keep with time, and I think we are not just too far from time. This lecture on Beyond the Text, Making Ghana Constitution Delivered Democracy. I guess we can all say that he's been thought-provoking, and that it has led to a lot of introspection as we sit and listen to the lecture. So when Dr. Kwapong talked about the definition of a witch, I was laughing because I had seen some time ago in the GS curricula about something to do with a head, and the head was described as for carrying. He said, what is the head? What is the head used for? And in the GS text, it says the head is for carrying things. So definitely, the orientation that we seek should always begin with the education. And I'm happy that a lot of participants out here have all spoken on the need for us to be very intentional about our educational system. I mean, I'm a sociologist, so when I hear the word culture, for instance, it gets my antennas off. And also, when I hear about education, it actually gets my antennas off too. Because the sociologist, Taco Parsons, talked about what he said, every society needs four things to survive. First is politics, second is economics, third is law. But of all of these, he said, was socialization, which is education. And he makes the argument that if you get all the three right, and you got the last one wrong, you have what he calls anomie, a state of lawlessness. So on that note, I want to thank you all. I want to thank the Honorable Afenyo Makin, and I also want to thank Dr. Kwapong for this lecture today. And I thank you all, every other person. If I've not mentioned your name, please forgive me, but thank you for coming, and God bless you.